Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be basically reviewing a process that I've been doing with my prints recently, and I've done 4 of these prints basically of the same print. Is you just do one layer of ink onto your perspex or glass or board or whatever you're printing onto and reprint off the same composition multiple times to see how many prints you can get out of one layer of ink. The printing ink I actually use is water-based, and it is this. It is block liner printing ink. I know, such a great name. But basically I just wanted to try this out to see how much I could actually get out of using one layer of ink within a certain composition. Obviously it may slightly alter the results depending on what composition, depending on how much exposure you are putting onto the perspex. So here we have the first 2 prints. The one on the left is the very first print. I do have to say every single print that I did on the perspex was with wetted paper, which is basically you get your piece of paper, you put it underneath a tap to wet it down, you put it on a piece of, well, I used a towel just to like let it soak up a little bit of the paper, pop it on top of the perspex, print it with your feet or if you've got a roller, etc, etc, to be able to soak up as much as the ink as possible. It's just a very good way of making sure you get the most out of your ink and transferring more ink onto the paper. So yeah, the one on the left is the very first print. Obviously you can tell there's a lot of contrast, a lot of ink has gone onto the piece of paper. There's a lot more sharpness between the collage paper compared to the second print, which is on the right. That being said, the one on the right for me is starting to be a lot more interesting because it has picked up a lot more detail but is not as contrasting as the first print. In saying that, I do think both of these prints work really well for different reasons. Obviously the left one picks up more printing ink, whereas the right one takes up a lot more of the finer image. That being said, also I did slightly alter the compositions in between each print because bits of paper would come off the paper, so I just put them back down. First 2 prints definitely easy enough to print 2 outcomes with just one layer of printing ink, but when we get onto the 3rd and 4th it becomes a lot more difficult, so I'll just show you. And on the right is the 3rd print of the same composition. As you may tell, there is a lot less contrast. It's very much picking up some of the bits of paper that have been taken off and the ink that is underneath it. You can sort of see this from this section here. This kind of looks like a person, whereas it's not exactly identifiable over here. It's still just as interesting because it starts to pick up all the little marks that have been left over, because obviously the bits of paper that are stuck on the surface aren't printing anymore, so they stick to either the paper that you've just printed onto, or they allow other marks that have not been used to show onto the paper, basically, if that makes any sense at all. It's still very interesting, but the difference between the 2nd and 3rd is starting to get so degraded, and as much control in terms of trying to get a contrasting composition. Like I said, it does not mean it's not interesting. Moving on to the next one. So this was the 4th and final one. So this one on the right is the last print that I did from the perspex. I kind of was umming and ahhing about doing this last one because there was so much less being picked up from the 3rd one compared to the first one, but I still went with it. I decided to just kind of go with my gut and see how much it can pick up. Surprisingly, it did pick up a lot, and as you can see there's a lot more fine lines and it picks up a lot more of the ink around the shapes rather than the shapes itself. It does make this kind of layered look, but in terms of predictability it's very hard to try and figure out what will show up and what will not show up. At this point I would probably not do any more prints from the 4th point of one layer, just because it might just not turn up anything at all. This is very much on the limit of what I want so I definitely would call it at the 4th printing attempt at how many layers you can get out of one single print. Obviously you can get more because there's still quite a lot of detail on here, but again, for a commercial point of view, I would not want to do any more than 4 prints. This one is very much pushing it, but I would love to try out and see how many layers of printing you can actually get from a single print, maybe in a much smaller sense of paper size. I feel like if I do it on A4 or even A5, that would be a good way to test really how much ink you can get out of one layer of ink that has been transferred onto the piece of paper. Now looking at this, you may think there's not much difference, but what you can really see it between the 1st and 4th prints. It's just surprising and it's very unpredictable, but I quite like that about printmaking as well. And especially when you get these kind of outcomes, it does make you think, oh, what kind of other compositions could actually alter how many printing processes you can actually get out of it. In terms of which one I think is most successful, I'm really stuck between these two. I feel like the left one has a lot to offer. It's very gradiated, and it definitely starts to pick up a lot more information in the first one because obviously it's completely blacked out by the ink process. But this one has a lot more, it has a lot more to say. It has a lot more depth, I feel, because you've got this sharp shape around here and it's starting to pick up a lot more of the paper bits that have not been touched more than once, whereas this one is pretty much taking off the bits of paper. I really hope you guys found this interesting and insightful. I hope if you're doing something similar to this, it helps you. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to leave them down below in the comments section. If you like this video, give it a like. If you like me, subscribe to my channel. I do a lot more videos on my channel every single day on weekdays, unless obviously life gets in the way, and that's completely fine. And I shall see you guys for my next video. Bye!